Welcome back to the second video here in our Full Rule Movie Club for Thanksgiving theme for the month of November. In this episode video clip that we're going to talk about is Dutch, a 1991 American comedy drama film directed by Peter Feynman, which is his second and last theatrical film after Crocodile Dundee, and written by John Hughes. The original musical score was composed by Alan Silvestri. The film stars Ethan Embry as Doyle Standish and Ed O'Neill, who is playing Dutch Dooley, and Joe Beth Williams with a cameo appearance by golfer great Arnold Palmer. Just as a fun fact, the movie was released in the UK and Australia as Driving Me Crazy. Go figure. Paden, we'll start with you on this one. What are your initial thoughts on the movie Dutch?
Well, I didn't really have any expectations originally going into this because I don't even know if I've even ever heard of it. And if I did, it just kind of like passed by and I never thought about it. So the first impression I actually got of it came from Tony, where he told me how awful this movie was. So I was like, oh, God, here we go. I thought we were going to have no offense to you, Dace, but how you picked that one crazy summer movie. I thought it was going to be another one of those. I was like, oh, fuck, this is going to be awful. And actually, I was pleasantly surprised. It was much better than Tony made me expect it to be. Ed O'Neill, another fantastic actor, very underrated, I think, as a comedian. I think he could be excellently funny. And the way he just bullied around this punk little kid, just watching him do that for an hour and a half was actually quite enjoyable.
Sweet. Tony, what were your first impressions on the movie Dutch?
It's my least favorite out of this bunch. It's not One Crazy Summer bad, but it's not something that I will ever watch again, most likely. The positives that I can say about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles are more in-depth than the ones that I can say for Dutch. Dutch had a couple more, probably, let me put it this way. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles has more quality laughs, but less quantity than Dutch does. Dutch, to me, is kind of an easy sell. And I've never been a big fan of slapstick comedy. That's one of the reasons why Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, some of the jokes don't hit me as well. And the same thing with Dutch. You know, the jokes that are more of the slapstick nature, they got to be really good for me to care about them. And the joke that Paden's referencing that I mentioned to him that gave him the idea that it was like the worst movie ever or whatever is at one point in the movie Ed O'Neill's character slips, falls, and his shoe hits him in the head. And to me, that's like something that you would see in the Three Stooges. And I hate the Three Stooges. So the points in this movie that weren't slapstick like that, I liked. Any of the ones that were like that, for the most part, I could pass on. So this was a very middle ground kind of movie.
One thing we always talk about when it comes to these films is casting. So in the lead roles, we obviously have Ed O'Neill and Ethan Embry. Some of the minor roles are Christopher McDonald as Reed Standish. E.G. Daly's in it, which gives you a completely different vision of Tommy Pickles. Damn. And Arnold Palmer as himself in this. So when it comes to casting, do you feel, and we'll start with you on Tony since it was your least favorite out of the four, do you feel that if somebody else played the lead roles, it would be more interesting?
No, I think everybody does a good part for the most part. First off, does Christopher McDonald ever play a good guy?
God, I don't know. Neither does Christopher McDonald.
I've never seen this dude be anybody but a complete asshole in everything that he is in. So as soon as he showed up as the dad, it was just like, okay, well, the dad clearly has no positive qualities at all. He's just, bottom feeder jerk who should get his comeuppance at the end or whatever. The 90s stereotypical hot hookers, you said it best. I'm not going to look at Tommy Pickles the same way again. I'm going to be hearing that voice and I'm going to be like, oh, the hot chick. Should not think of that when little kids are on the screen, but she was pretty hot, and so was the other one. Back in the time that this came out, if I would have been a teenager, I would have been all over them.
And specifically, they were 80s hot.
Yeah, that's the thing. Now, if I saw them walking on the street, I'd be like, wait,
did the fuck's wrong with your hair?
Yeah, did I just go through a time machine? What the fuck's happening? But looking at pictures of what E.G. Daly looks like now, just look kind of hot. So...
she aged very well.
Yeah, credit to her. But Ed O'Neill is at a weird time in this movie where he hasn't completely gotten typecast as his character from Married with Children. And I'm more familiar with him from that than anything else, so I could see little bits and pieces of that coming out, but that's fine because that's the type of character that he is in this. I mean, he is a prick, and he is really gruff and edgy and around the edges that you wouldn't really tolerate in most ways. And the same thing for the kid. Ethan Embry, I know more from Can't Hardly Wait, so it was a little bit of a shock to see him be something other than a complete pussy. But he did a good job. I mean, for a little kid that is supposed to be annoying, he's annoying as fuck. So everybody's, as far as the casting side goes, they all pretty much nail what they're supposed to. If anybody's a downside, it would be the mom.
Paden, what were your thoughts on the casting for this film?
Aside from Ed O'Neill, I don't know who any of these people are. If I haven't admitted this before, I am terrible with actor names. Whenever I talk to Tony, he'll always be talking about a movie. He's like, "Oh, it has this guy and this guy and this guy, this guy and this guy," and I'm like, I maybe know one of those guys. That's a maybe. Like usually it's a none. When it comes to wrestlers, I know a ton. In fact, I might actually outnumber Tony on that one. But with actors, I don't know shit. Freaking. So I couldn't comment on what any of these other people have done, what I'm used to them, what I think of them as people. I think they all performed their roles fine. There was nobody in this where I was like, yeah, they're not that person. And in a way that helped because, I didn't have them typecasted to anything else. I just see them as whoever I'm seeing them in this movie.
You don't see McDonald as Shooter McGavin?
Oh, I didn't even recognize him without the mustache.
Pew, pew. Shooter McGavin. Some facts about the movie. It had a budget of $17 million.
What?
It did, and the box office didn't even break 5. So it's definitely considered a flop. It released July 19th, 1991. In the middle of summer movies, which probably is why it didn't do well. It was directed by Peter Feynman, produced by Robert Weissman, written by John Hughes, and of course we talked about who stars in it. The music was by Alan Silvestri, distributed by 20th Century Fox, and it has a runtime of 90 minutes. So when it comes to the score of this film, there's one song that really sticks out to me, and it's every time they pull out the damn BB gun. Tony, what were your thoughts on the score and the soundtrack for Dutch?
I don't remember any of it at all.
Really?
So it must not have made an impression, positive or negative. What was the thing that was happening with the gun?
Every time he pulled out the BB gun, there was it's not the song from freaking Ferris Bueller, but it's kind of like that.
Oh yeah, BB gun.
It's just like this upbeat do. And every time they would pull out the beat, and they would do these eye movements back and forth, like, "Oh, you're not gonna shoot me. Oh, you're not gonna shoot me." And then they finally shoot each other. So that song has always stuck with me, and I don't know why the eye movements too. But like you said, it's not memorable. Paden, what are your thoughts on the soundtrack and score for this movie?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same spot. I got nothing. Absolutely nothing. Sorry.
It's a shame because Alan Silvestri's good.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess he phoned it in on this one.
Probably. I mean, he probably got $5 million. Said, "Hey, just put a soundtrack together."
He's the reason the budget's $17 million. They paid him all this money, and he's like, "I don't know, just put some shit out there." He bangs his fucking keyboard, and he's like, "There you go, it's brown, 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 brown."
Paden, what are your thoughts? What was your favorite moment when it comes to the movie Dutch?
I think my favorite part in the movie is when he actually first meets the kid and they're having their whole first interaction and he's kind of feeling him out and he's realizing wow, this kid's a lot worse than I thought he was, but he's not going to get beaten down. He just stays strong on him. And by the end, he's walking out with him tied to a hockey stick.
What was your least favorite moment, if you have one?
I don't know. I don't really have one, I guess. It's hard to come up with a least favorite movie in comedies. When you say a least favorite movie, I guess it's the part where it's not being funny is the easiest thing to say.
Yeah.
There was no jokes in this where I groaned at or felt like we're really stupid. At least no more than I would have expected it to be for an 80s comedy.
Sweet. Tony, what was your high point for this movie?
Very, very, very early on. And then it kind of went downhill. But when you first meet the little kid, when the audience meets the little kid, and there's the other little kid who's my favorite character in the whole fucking thing, and he he seems like he's one of these like preppy douchebag kids too, yet he's got balls on him. He's just like, he calls him shithead. He says, well, at least I have a father. It's like, oh, that's a fucking shot. And the best line that he has, have a nice weekend rotting in your pissed off world. I was like, yes, this kid's awesome. I want this kid to be in the whole film, and I was so disappointed that he wasn't.
What was your low point for the film?
I would say it's the shoe scene, but there's one scene that really took me out of the movie, and that was the fireworks going off. That went on for way too long, and the joke was already made when they bought the fireworks. You know, you're like, okay, fireworks are going to go off and hurt Ed O'Neill. They're not going to hurt the kid, because that would just be like too brutal to have him like with third-degree burns and shit. But at some point, either the kid's going to set the bag off, or the bag's going to get set off accidentally, and it's either going to blow something up, or it's going to blow up in the car with them, or it's a guarantee it's going to happen. And they drug that fucker out for like what felt like 8 minutes, especially after they had already made the joke of like it went off, and it just keeps going off and not doing anything different. You got this weird music in the background. Ed O'Neill's making these weird faces. Like, it's almost as if they filmed that scene goofing off and then decided to throw it into the movie because they needed to pad it an extra couple minutes or something. That's without a doubt my least favorite scene of the movie.
Okay, before we wrap up Judge the Film, let's get our final thoughts, and we'll give it a rating between 1 and 10. Paden, we'll start with you on this one. What are your final thoughts on the movie Dutch, and a rating 1 to 10?
It was a fairly unoffensive movie. I guess if I had to give it a score, it would be just above middle ground, maybe like a 6.5, maybe a 7. I can't give it too high. It's nothing exceptional that I'm going to say, go out of your way. If it's on, watch it. If it's not, don't go out of your way.
Tony, what are your final thoughts on Dutch, and a rating 1 to 10?
I'd give it a 5 out of 10 because I don't want to be mean enough to give it a 4 out of 10 or whatever for a couple other things that I did like in it, like that one kid at the beginning. But it's something I won't watch again. It's not something I'd recommend to anybody. It really does work well as a movie that a network could put on TV for Thanksgiving Day if they want to just have Thanksgiving movies play. Because there's really not that many Thanksgiving movies out there, and this definitely is a Thanksgiving movie. But outside of following that kind of structure, I just didn't think it's really that good of a movie. If you take that out of the Thanksgiving theme that we're doing here, and if this would have been suggested as like one of the 4 movies, if we were just doing comedy movies, I'd be pissed.
Yeah, you would have yelled at me.
But like, why is this One Crazy Summer in here too? What the fuck?
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on our second part of the November Thanksgiving Films for 4 Real Movie Club. You're watching on the YouTubes. Make sure you click over to the link and go on to part 3, where we'll be talking about Scent of a Woman. Hoo-ha!